So, let's see. As you guys know, I opened this class up, or maybe you don't know, but I don't know why you had a hold on it at 25, but there's no more hold on it. But if you're having difficulty registering, and maybe it's too late for any of these things, because it's, we started late in the situation of the term here. Just go to the secretary. He knows to admit everybody who wants to get admitted, and if you have some 495 issue, go let him make out a paper or something, and he'll put it in my box, I'll sign it. So, shouldn't be any problems. Now, I took some handouts from some people last time, so I got some new ones. Who wanted these things? You wanted yours back? Yeah, here. Anyone else needed one of these? You wanted yours back, okay. Syllabus, I don't know what it is. Did you ever see the movie called Battleground? I think it was called Battle of the Bulge or something? Yeah. That's our generation, and they drop the leaflets, and the guys all pick them up, and then they use them for toilet paper. I know it was a movie, Hollywood approached the thing, but this is maybe only good for that, or souvenirs, but it can maybe help you. You an LA something fan? What LA is it? It's black and white. I never saw an LA team black and white.
Raiders.
Raiders. Oh yeah, Raiders. Let them stay there. I mean, they haven't won a game since they left Oakland, came to LA, and went back to Oakland. I mean, that team has been.
They almost won yesterday. Stupid time.
They did. They almost won, but the refs stole it from them, didn't they? That was a referee's steal. That was obviously, they've got one of the owners of one of the teams has been taping other people's football signals and stuff. They have basketball referees who are corrupt. Believe me, there's plenty of corrupt referees. That I'm sure. That was a real phony deal. But the Raiders didn't pay him enough. The Raider owner is cheap, Oh, okay, so I got some of these here. All right, so last time we did go through a lot of discussion of books, what you might want, what you might need, what you might not want to bother with. At that time, I didn't have on me this book here. One of you did have it on you, but I really recommend this book. First of all, like I told you last time, but if I didn't, like I did, I heard in the mail last time and really depressed because I sold this Maccabees, Zadokites, Christians, and Qumran to about 20 years of classes here for a very cheap price. My professor's discount price, and we basically sold out the whole print run in use in classes like this. And I'd like to get all those students to send it back to me now, because some guy said he went online and the book is costing in used condition $2,500. So let me tell you, you may turn out books end up worth something. So I wouldn't give them away so fast. I mean, if I get my hands on that book, I had no idea that book would ever be worth anything. I never should have let any students have it at all. That's just like a huge error on my part. I mean, I could be rich now and retire. If you can, if you had like around, 500 times that number, I could have, if I hadn't sold any of those books but just hoarded them myself, 500 times 5, that's more money than I, getting to retire here. So that shows how stupid you can be. I'm not trying to bore you, but I always have a gripe with my mother, who's 100 years old. And I told you last time she must be doing something right, or she probably wouldn't get to that age, but she's not conscious of being anything except that age. She likes being that age because she likes the fact she's lived longer than everybody else. It makes her feel triumphant. But she was never, there was never a lot of brain power for everyday affairs, or, you wouldn't want to rely on her opinion on anything. And so when she cleaned out moved, when she moved to an apartment, cleaned out the garage, she threw out all my baseball cards. And I had every baseball card from about 1941 to 1951. I had everything, you know. And some of those cards, like Ted Williams cards, Bobby Dorr, you know, Willie Mays and so on, 4 or 5 different cards. You know, you could retire on those cards. She chucked them. She kept my National Wildlife Federation books instead. That's what I'm telling you, you know. Throughout World War I helmets, you know, all kinds of things like that that someone had fought in that war and brought home, and you know, I don't even want to think about it. So just don't let anyone throw any of your stuff out until you've had a look, see first, you know, because you just never know, what's going to come around. That book, I've got 2 copies left, and really, and one of them a student gave me some time. I'm going to give it back to her. That book has that essay in, and some other company has pirated this book and doesn't pay me anything for it, so I'm not making anything off this book. But it's got a lot of good essays here in it, and it's got the translations, which I'm going to use in this class. And this book I didn't have last time with me, but this is the new book that a lot of us in this class worked on, called the New Testament Code. And I told you that some of the pictures in this book, you know, these are the best pictures that I've had in any book, because I did the editing of the pictures myself. And, you know, they scream bloody murder when I, you know, put more than one picture on a page, but I want to get as many pictures in as I could, because I realize people don't read anything. They just look at pictures. So, anyway, we were speaking about Ron and Dennis the other day and what they discovered. So they discovered this thing here, and I've got their names in here, that they discovered it there. I was in a younger mode, you know. So I thought I even put my son when he was with us 20 years ago, doing a radar grounds, kind of there he is with Dennis and some other people here. Dennis Walker used to go here, one of our students when we did the walking survey. He's a little kid here, and he's thrilled because I finally mentioned him. Here he is, a little kid here, about 15 years old, doing the radar ground scan of Cave 4. And I finally gave him credit for having discovered this, I don't know what's going on out there. Having discovered this, you know, lookout post here on the little river that runs down from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea. It'll come to me what's the name of the river is. I don't know how to look here. The Kedron. The Kedron Valley comes down from Jerusalem, so rivulet. And I'm sure that's how those guys walk up and down from that location to Jerusalem. They just the other day, if you follow these things, found a tunnel that escapees from the war of 67 to 70 had to use to escape Jerusalem, described in Josephus. They have dug it out. It's perfect condition, beautiful stones and everything like that. And it lets out in a place that would come down to the Kedron Valley, that you would walk down to the Dead Sea from there. So that's one lot of picture pages. So then, since the publishers saw that I put some good pictures pages in, they said, oh, well, since you've done those, why don't you put some more in? So, in fact, I did. So I ended up putting about, these are just page markers so I can find some things I need to find. So I ended up putting 120 some odd pictures in this thing. Here's a picture I took in the Louvre of, I don't like to pay people for pictures if I don't have to. I try to use all my own pictures of Augustus. So I hope the Louvre doesn't come and get me, but I understand that the picture is yours if you've taken it. So very few, you know, I don't think it's a real thing that they could do anything. But I mean, I better be quiet. This is for posterity. I don't want to, you know. This one I took of a beautiful floor that they had reconstructed, a mosaic floor in Italica in Spain, Italica in Spain is outside of Cordoba, and it's a city where Trajan and Hadrian came from. And Paul expresses an intention to go visit Spain at some point in his letters, and I have a feeling it's because has some connection to these kind of families that are in Italica in Spain, and that is an incredible mosaic floor, I think. And this is Trajan, this is Hadrian, this is a coin that I bought myself, and I put it on the, what do you call it, copy, when you're trying to copy a page, what do you call that thing? Scan machine. Put it on the scan machine, and this is how it came out, the actual coin. So I'm quite pleased with that. My son said, oh, just stick it down there, Dad, you know, and it'll come out. So I scanned it, and sure enough, it came out. That's my own silver coin of Hadrian, which is quite a beautiful one. And I'm quite pleased with the pictures. So with a lot of Qumran documents mixed in and so on, ending with what we call Judea Capta coins here, which shows the Romans taking the surrender of the Jews and putting it on a coin here. So you have the Roman soldier and the weeping Judean captive here. And on the coin is written Judea Capta, captive Judea, which means that's obviously what, on the other side is Vespasian, the Roman general we're talking about, Flavian, the initiator of the Flavian dynasty. And then of course this is his son's arch. Those are the candelabras and things that the prisoners were carrying in the final victory of his son Titus, the victory that was accorded him in Rome after the fall of Jerusalem. And since I like the idea of the cup, we always talk about the cup, you know, and you know, the Holy Grail and all this sort of thing. This to me is the real cup of that time. And as you see, it's a chalice on a Jewish revolutionary coin from year 4 saying redemption of Zion. So the year 4 of the war against Rome inscribed redemption of Zion with this, it's obviously a chalice from the temple, but still it's a chalice from that period. This is a real chalice from that period, not an imaginary one. So that's how I ended up. Anyway. If you like that, this book is worth having. It's got some good pictures in it, and that's because it was one of the books I listed. But you don't really have to have it for this course. It's big tome. People say, why do you write these big tomes? You know, it's an ego trip. I admit that. But it isn't just an ego trip. It's so they'll last. Because, you know, if you have a thin book that's paper thin, often it might last, but usually it doesn't. You know, you have to, it's like the chaff which the wind bloweth away. You know, it's thin and it'll blow away just that quickly. And you may think you've said great things in it, but, you know, you haven't got the weight. You know, books like Das Kapital, Marx's book, you know, that, you know, it's a heavy tome that nobody reads, but still it lasts. Or Melville's Moby Dick. These are big, huge books, so no one understands them, therefore they last. But people still look into them and try to figure out what they mean and stuff. So I figured that the only way to write anything that's going to have any substantial lasting power is make it big. You know, put it all in there. And so that's what, so you might affect sales, so you might not get rich. Someone who ripped off a lot of my stuff, a friend of mine, God, it's taped. Oh my God. A guy named James Tabridge, a friend of mine, he came out on my digs and things with me and got involved in he has his own website, has his own book. Now he's got a book called The Jesus Dynasty and stuff. When I first met him, he never believed any of these things. Anyway, he got a contract worth, you know, literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for that book. It was a nice thin book. But I didn't take any contract on this book. So it doesn't matter to me how much money comes in on those books, but that they have staying power is something that I care about. So that's a private comment for whatever it's worth. Maybe it's an ego trip, maybe not. You'll see. We'll all see if they have any staying power. And unless the reason they're big is because you have to make them stand up to scholars' criticism and also have all the things in them that a lay person knows nothing about the subject can also use too. So it has to be heavy enough to stand up to people who are going to question it, but it has to also be, you know, wide enough that people who don't know anything about the subject, never have been studied the subject, have all the sources at their disposal. They don't have to go look for them. Because if they have to go look for them, they're not going to go find them. People say, I can't understand your books because they're too dense. Which means they haven't gone and looked. And you know, to read a book like that, you have to have a New Testament next to you, preferably in Greek and English. You have to have a collection of Dead Sea Scrolls next to you, so you can look stuff up, and perhaps some maybe early rabbinic or early church father stuff, so you can make sure that the stuff's there. But most of the stuff I try to provide in the book itself. So again, I don't recommend this book for this course necessarily, though if you read this whole book, which actually the last half of it has all the Dead Sea Scroll documents that we're going to do in this class analyzed in great detail, you wouldn't have to take this course at all. You could just go home and forget about it, because you would know everything that I'm doing in this course and more. So that's all I can tell you. You guys worked on it, didn't you? So you folks know something of what's in that book, right? So. Okay. So now, any questions about the organization of this class? Anything, problems on the handouts and so on? So last time we did the books, what books you might need, and I said what we're basically going to start with is the apocryphal material, talk about what apocryphal material was, and until the midterm, Josephus. Josephus, Jewish War. I said, well, how are you going to get those? Well, I had some people in my other class tell me they went online and got a copy of Penguin Josephus for $1.50. The only thing that cost them was to send to have the postage, have it sent, and they showed me the book, and it was almost perfect condition. So, and this was on Amazon.com. So you can pick up those books for like, you know, maybe the cheapest one was $1.50, but I'm sure for $2, $3, $4, it's better than the bookstore, frankly. So the fact that it's unavailable is no problem. You know, just go online and get it, because in fact you'll get it cheaper than in the bookstore, and quicker too for some things. So just get a copy of the Jewish War, or if you want all of the documents. So I didn't get a new roll sheet, so let me borrow your pen a minute, because I want to mark this thing. Thanks a lot. Let me just call this off quick. See who's here. On, I saw you, right? Angel Field. There you are. Austin, all the A's are always here. X up. X up? No. Barrett. Well, I guess you're not here. Okay. Edlin. Yeah, you weren't here at the beginning last time, right? Or you came again? Yeah, okay. Fans, I saw Frank.
Here.
Okay. Frazier.
Here.
You weren't here at the beginning last time, right? Okay. Grable.
Here.
Yeah. Gross. Right. Hodges. Boy. Here you are. Oh, there you are. Okay. Jimenez. Kill. Custorance. You weren't here at the beginning and you're not here now. Lever. You weren't here at the beginning last time, right?
I was.
You was, okay, but, so, oh yeah, I'll try to cross that out, right? Levitsky, I'm not marking this enrollment at the moment anyway. I'm just trying to see who's here. Levizzi. No. Low. No. Metzmaker is going to come later. Marino.
Here.
Where? Okay. Rodella. Tarvin. Tobias, I see you both. Tran. No. Okay. Winslow. Heroes.
Zeros.
Okay, Heroes. E. Robertson. Okay, who did I call? Okay, you guys got in? You're gonna get in. And you should, just tell the guy that you're in, and he'll put you in. What's your name?
Daniel
Alliston, okay.
Danny Garcia. Patricia Soriano.
How do you spell that?
Soriano. S-O-R-I-N.
S-O-R-I-N.
A-N.
A-N-O. Patricia.
Sarah Martinez?
Yeah, you were here last time, weren't you?
Yeah. But I'm still out.
So what happened? You couldn't get in? Why?
Well,
Did he open it up, suppose he took the limit off it, didn't he? Did you try on the computer?
not.
Okay, well, try again. It should work, yeah.
Mike Cohen.
Are you in or out? Did you get in?
I've been in.
Yeah, okay. Oh, there you are, Michael Cohen. I see you. Right. I don't know why I didn't call you. Yeah, I see you. Yeah, you're on there. 12. So that's it? Okay, fine. And there's a lot of others who are doing the graduate thing, right? So we'll talk about that another time. Who's this? Okay, cool. All right. Now, for fear of repeating myself, for people taking classes with me in the past, I want to start at the beginning and bring us down to the scrolls, so that you all are starting from the same place. Because a lot of people I find, actually, though they think they know the Bible or something about history, know almost nothing. So I can't teach you everything in one moment or on one foot. But let's start with Adam, shall we? That's where the Bible starts. By the way, I don't know when he lived. But one thing which will become important when we move along here is that the name Adam means also what in Hebrew? Man. So Adam and man are the same thing. Now, so we call the first man Adam, but he's also the name for all man or humankind, if you want. I don't want to get sexist about this, or chauvinist or whatever. But ancients, did emphasize maleness, let's face it. You can attack them or think whatever you want, but I'm not sure it's much better today when everything's being feminized either. I mean, I don't know if the world's a better place, so I can't judge. We'll have to wait another 500 years to tell. So today everything, is like, well, I think it's kind of like totally womanized now in the sense that women are dominant in culture and things like that. If you write a book and you're a woman, you get published much quicker than a man. You apply for a teaching job someplace in this university or others, you get hired much quicker. I told all my sons, don't even bother going into academia. Unless you got some really thing going for you or know how to network, you might as well forget it. And so on and so forth. So, I'm not trying to put that down. I'm just saying that ancient man had one universe, we have another one. So I don't want to put ancient man or womankind down either. That's how they looked at the world. So it was a masculine dominated world, for good or for bad. Why is Adam important? In terms of what we're going to do when we get to Daniel, what's the big prophecy in Daniel? That is the whole ball of wax. One of the main reasons for reading Daniel, something the New Testament totally picks up on and runs with and makes a huge deal out of. And well, I don't know if the scrolls are so interested in it, but they do like Daniel. Daniel's an important book in the Dead Sea Scrolls. First of all, what people don't realize is Daniel isn't even written in Hebrew. It's written in Aramaic. People say this is the Hebrew Bible. Well, that's a misnomer too. They want to change the word from Old Testament to that. That's the present scholarly sort of approach. Well, Daniel is an Aramaic book, so how is it the Hebrew Bible? It's a collection of books. Some of them are Hebrew, most of them are Hebrew, but some are not. Well, at least one isn't. I think there may be another that isn't. I'll have to check it out. But in any case, Daniel doesn't even use Adam. Daniel uses Bar for a son of man. Ben Adam is son of man in Hebrew. Bar Enosh, the word for man in Aramaic, is son of man in Aramaic. So actually, Daniel says, and I saw one like a son of man coming on the clouds of heaven. I saw one like a son of man coming on the clouds of heaven. That's the whole thing in Daniel, isn't it? How does the New Testament run with that? How do the Gospels run with it? I don't know if Paul runs with it so much, but the Gospels run with it. How do the Gospels run? What do the Gospels say? Oh, it's over and over again. The Son of Man came drinking. The Son of Man came drinking and eating. The Son of Man was a glutton. You will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. How many are familiar with those kind of passages in the Gospel? What? You've never heard those passages? You've been to churches, never heard those passages? Come on, you're fooling me. You just don't want to admit it. I know. Well, to my mind, that shows that the Gospels, first of all, are written by people who don't know Hebrew or Aramaic and are overseas origin. And actually, just from that alone, I know I'm pushing a lot into that, but actually know very little about what's going on in Palestine at all. Most of what they're talking about is like poorly digested hearsay and so on. Now, I'm not saying there was no Jesus or there is a Jesus, but I don't think if there was a Jesus, he spat in someone's eye or in someone's ear and it was cured or something. Yeah, you say, no, that's not in the Gospels. Oh, yes, it is. And I don't think that there's a Jesus who says, don't wash your hands before eating. That's in the Gospels too. Why? Why would I say that he didn't say that? Because people are putting their own ideas into Jesus' mouth. They say, oh, they wouldn't do that. Well, that's what people did in ancient times. People always used figures of some authority and importance to put their own sayings and ideas in that person's mouth. So the whole problem of the historical Jesus, and don't be offended by what I'm telling you, I'm trying to cover a lot of ground quickly, and I wish someone had told me this when I was 25, would have saved me a lot of trouble. I didn't really discover these things until I was about 45. I didn't know the nature of the literature that I was dealing with. So the whole thing at that time was to get yourself prestige. We didn't have Britney Spears who'd go on the, whatever those awards were and be half naked and be chubby, so that the newspapers would cover her from end to end, and 6 months from now she's going to come out all thin, so that, so she gets a double whammy PR whack out of the whole thing. She's way ahead of us and you guys, but she's covered from the one end of the globe to the other because she was a little chubby. And, last time was cutting off her hair or something. She knows how to play this game to the hilt, So she did that on purpose, and she'll come out and do something else pretty soon and so on to keep it in the news. So, ancients didn't have that. So if you were unknown, you were unknown. How'd you get known? You put your ideas under someone who was known's aegis or name. We have a whole series of books written under whose name in the Dead Sea Scrolls and in a lot of churches what we call apocryphal literature. I told you a little bit about apocryphal literature last time. I'll try to tell you more this time. But we have a whole series of books written under other people's names, and we actually refer to these things often as pseudo-bigraphic. I think I probably spelled that wrong. I guess it's pseudo, I don't know, I think it's like that. Pseudo-pigrapha, I know it that way, so pseudo-bigraphic has an E in it. I just emphasize the pseudo, since you guys know what pseudo means. False writings. False, or under a false pen name. We have a whole series of books like that. So one of them is, I was trying to elicit when I asked the question, I think I mentioned it last time, but if I didn't. Why, if I mentioned it last time, I sometimes don't remember because I got 2 classes I'm teaching and I forget which one I mentioned it. Why would someone want to use Enoch to write there? Obviously Enoch didn't write any books. He's the 3rd or 5th man or 6th man, I don't know, after Adam in the genealogical line, living for how many years? I think 777 or something like that. Great number. 777, come 777, good number for dice, and that's really why 7 is so important, as we'll find out, I think. Why is 7 important in dice? Because it's the number that most frequently comes up, isn't it? You've got 2 cubes of dice, so 7 is 6, 1, 5, 2, 4, 3, and so on. No other number has the frequency of 7. Oh, of course, it's not as simple as that. Mix that with the phases of the moon, I think you've got it. Why 7 is such an important number for the ancients. Why, it's a mixture of things. People who, fortune tellers who stood outside of shrines and rolled dice. They had dice in those days, They really did. And they would, roll like, well, when I was a kid, they rolled it against the wall and played craps, they call it, and stuff like that. But they really rolled this stuff to get some sort of significance out of the numbers. But be that as it may, Enoch is one of the patriarchs after Adam. And he lives for 770 years. And then what does the Bible say about him? All the other ones died around 900 some odd years, 800 some odd years, and that's all nonsense, obviously, and poetic exaggeration. They don't have to, no one feels very closely attached to that. They only get angry at the New Testament. No one gets angry when you say something in the Old Testament is silly. But if you say something in the New Testament is silly, people get worked up. That just shows an attachment, a solidarity, honoring the ancestors. You feel just under threat there. But if you're not childish, and if you are like Paul, as he said, when I was a boy or a child, I saw things as a child. When I grew up, I put away childish things. But then he adds, as through a glass darkly, whatever he means by that, and it's been a favorite euphemism ever since. But I told you last time, and if I didn't, I keep telling my classes about this, and this professor of mine, when I was your age, turned out to be a lunatic, actually, from what I later found out about him. He went way off the deep end and became a kind of Catholic sort of action person who, I don't know what he was up to during the student riots in Kansas. He wasn't in the Kansas raid or anything like that in the Civil War, but later on Lawrence, Kansas is what was raided in the Civil War, if you recall. But at the University of Kansas, where he later transferred to, he was involved in all kinds of weird stuff against the student activisms of the 70s. But when I had him, it was only in the 50s, and he was a young faculty member. He was pretty cool. Everyone loved him and thought he was really colorful. But he said something I never forgot, and I'm still talking about it to this day. Poetry is truer than history. And, I said, oh my God, how clever, this guy is so clever, and we'd be awestruck because he's so clever. What did he mean by that? He said, what does he mean by that? And so on and so forth. Well, I think what he meant by that, and what I think is very, very real and meaningful, is that it isn't what actually happened that people really care about. People only care about what the poets tell them happened. That is what the literature tells you happened. I take the Gospels as literature, not history. People don't really know the truth about what happened in that period, or didn't happen, and I don't know any more than you do. We weren't there. We didn't have tape recorders. But the literature is what people know. So the literature is what they recall. Take Islam, for instance. I'll get back to what I'm talking about, Enoch. Take Islam, for instance. I mean, I know Muslims all go around, if you meet one, say, oh, we shouldn't be fighting. Jews and Arabs are cousins and brothers and so on and so forth. And, you are the sons of Jacob and we are the sons of Ishmael, Come on. What are you telling me? Why do they say that? Because Muhammad said that in the Quran. So I'm not saying, I don't want to get into Muhammad get beheaded or something like that. But, they believe it, just because it was said to them. But I'll bet if we took their DNA, we'd find out 9/10 of them have nothing to do with Ishmael at all. They're just conquered peoples. Many of them probably fought against Islam. Their parents probably fought against Islam. But when they were conquered and taken over, and their mindset was, restamped. How many saw that movie Alien? The little creatures in the spaceship. And they're, I think, well, I forget the image, but they're like, growing out of all these other creatures that are supposed to be, being preserved in this spaceship, and out come these aliens one after another, these little monstrous aliens. The point is that, in the Islamic world, the stamp is Muhammad. Whatever he said, everyone believes. And by the way, as I said last time, if you don't believe it, you better be careful, because you can lose your head if you don't believe it. So it isn't just that you do believe it, it's safer to believe it. Because when you have non-separation of church and state, as I said last time, that can become, a very seriously difficult problem. But anyway, what I'm trying to say, so he says in the Quran, we are the sons of Ishmael. Where did he get that from? The Bible. He got that from the Bible. Stories in the Bible. I'm not even sure it's true in the Bible. But the point of the matter is, the Bible was talking about Sinai tribes, Sinai Midianites. They were talking about Joseph and Midian and Moses and Jethro and people like that. And they weren't talking about deep Arabia, and they certainly weren't talking about Iraq, and they certainly weren't talking about Egypt. And yet if you go to Egypt or Iraq or Libya or Morocco, or we're sons of Ishmael, that's how a poetic image can become history. It's simpler. It's simpler. And as you say, your parents might have opposed the sons of Ishmael. 10 generations down the pipeline, your parents are totally forgotten. I think I asked you last time. How many people know anything about their great-grandparents? Very few. Some people don't even know their names. I mean, okay, your grandparents presumably, but great-grandparents? What they did in their life? What did they do? What was their day-to-day life like? Great-great-grandparents? Your memory fails at that point, because your parents' memory can't go beyond that point. So and if you've bothered to ask them, that's all they can communicate with you. But if you've written the Odyssey or the Iliad, which is why all the ancients wanted poets to sing their praises, because they knew if the poets sang their praises, their name would never die. And the poet's stories become the history. And that's true in the Gospels and a lot of other places, and the Old Testament too. I don't know about the historical Abraham. I'm sure there was some person like that at some point, but the stories about Abraham, they repeat themselves 3 different times. A lot of them resemble David. Looks like they were told in David's prayer to glorify David in some way, and so on and so forth. So, these are the storytellers. This is what primordial history is about. So when we say poetry is truer than history, that's what we mean. It's what people believe or think happened that matters, not what did happen. But now we have DNA, you see. And we can go to Egypt. My doctor is an Egyptian, I think I told you. He had his DNA done in the National Geographic Genome Project. And he found out that he's been in Egypt for 40 centuries. And he was thrilled. He said, I've been in Egypt. I'm an Egyptian from 40 centuries back. Meaning he's not an Arab. He's an Egyptian. But if you asked him what he would say he was an Arab. But I mean, he was so thrilled to have been an Egyptian from 40 centuries ago or something like that. That's what his DNA came out to be. At least that's what he told me. So the point is, we have tools, and now we have the Dead Sea Scrolls. So those are very complicated documents. And that makes it much more complicated. The history becomes much more complicated because we actually have accounts that are contemporary with the events that occurred. And they were hidden like a space capsule in caves. So now that makes everything a little more complicated, but people haven't digested that yet, which is why a course like this is fun, important, and good to have. So anyway, let's go back to Enoch then. Obviously, Enoch never wrote any books. So why would someone put something under Enoch's name? Because they wanted the prestige for it. They wanted the prestige for it. And so there's about 10 different versions of Enoch's supposed writings. And the main reason, again, why they wanted the prestige, because it says in the Bible, and he was 777 years old When he was taken up to heaven, meaning Enoch didn't die. He's the primordial, if you like, forerunning, resurrected person who goes to heaven and never dies, something like Jesus, if you like. So even that is, played on the imagination of the ancients. So they wanted books. What did he see up in heaven? And, what an important person. He obviously was taken straight to heaven and didn't die. All the other ones died. The books don't say this about him, but that's the implication. So he was a very impressive figure to write books about. We'll find Daniel is the same thing. When we look at the book of Daniel, it's going to go from Nebuchadnezzar all the way down to Darius's time, the Medes and the Persians, maybe even Xerxes. I'm not even sure if we look at the writing. In other words, Daniel is spanning about a 250-year period. He didn't live 250 years. In fact, who mentions Daniel in the Bible? Jeremiah. He's mentioned the prophet Jeremiah as one of the wise men of old. So that person was living before Jeremiah, at the most in Jeremiah's time, and Jeremiah's time is somewhere in the 600s. So Daniel was a person who lived even before or during the 600s, at the most. He wasn't living in Persia in the 450s, at the time of the Battle of Marathon, or, the 300. I don't know how many have seen the 300. I taped it the other night on TV because all of my offspring are so enamored of the silly cartoon version of the 300. But anyway, it's better than nothing. At least it shows the manliness, which used to be count for something. Kind of a stereotyped manliness, muscle-bound manliness, sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger before he stopped taking his steroids.
No accent.
No, had a little accent, had a Scottish brogue, actually. He said, the actor was a Scot, so anyway. Did you guys see the 300?
Yeah.
How many saw the 300? Oh, yeah, you see? That's history now. That's the poetry. That's what you'll remember. Now you just proved what I was trying to say. So that's why when I'm talking about the Gospels, going back to the Gospels, you say, well, come on, Professor Eisenman. A lot of people believe all of this. That's not my fault. That's not my problem. That's their problem. Again, Paul said, if you want to believe things completely, if you're under authority, if you're a Muslim or a Jewish person or a Christian person, lots of people are under authority. It's not just one. Jews are under authority too. They can believe the silliest things you can imagine. I can tell you that. And I don't want to insult anyone because people are more sensitive. Christians are more sensitive than Jews about these things. And Muslims are so sensitive. I say that they'll kill you. They just put a death warrant out there for this guy that did the cartoon in Denmark. They put a reward out, 500,000 kopecks or something, for the person who slits his throat. They killed that guy in Holland because he was made a movie that was trying to stop female circumcision in East Africa or something like that. And they pinned a sign on him with a knife, and telling his crimes against the Ummah or the community. This is serious stuff. So you want to be careful. But when people are under authority, they don't have a choice whether to believe or not. Thomas Jefferson didn't believe in the New Testament completely. He wrote his own version of the New Testament. Now, he's not a genius or a god, but he's a thinking person. So look, I think I told you, if I didn't, the letters of Paul are pretty authentic. That is, the major ones. You can see that they're pretty autobiographical, and someone was called Paul or something like that, wrote those letters, and they were preserved. And that's Romans, Galatians, 1 and 2 Corinthians, some of Thessalonians, and Philippians. The others scholars have some doubt about, but that's plenty, man. We don't need any more than those letters to know what he thought. So, or where he was coming from, or what he was preoccupying him, or what his mindset was. Why am I mentioning him? Because we're going to have to bring Paul up in the second part of this class, because there's material in the scrolls that seem to relate to someone of that kind, as I mentioned last time. So it's going to be important. But the Gospels are written, almost everyone agrees, and I'm sure it's true, after Paul. They're written after Paul's letters because Paul doesn't refer to the Gospels. He doesn't know anything about the Gospels. He knows one thing, the Last Supper, and something of what Jesus said in the Last Supper that is then incorporated into the Gospels. That's the only thing that he said that he was taught. Where does he speak about that, about what Jesus said or did at the Last Supper? That was pretty, but he said he was taught that by somebody. And he doesn't even call him Jesus, he calls him the Lord, I think he calls him. In any case, part of the title of this book is The Cup of the Lord, the Damascus Covenant, and the Blood of Christ. Because the blood of Christ is, really important for Christian theory and so on. And the Last Supper, this is the new covenant in my blood. If you know, drink this in memory of me. Or this was poured out for you. I can't remember the different versions of Paul's. And Luke always reflects Paul because Luke was considered someone who was close to Paul. So Luke's version is a little bit different from Matthew and Mark. They usually are similar to each other. And John doesn't even have it. John has something else altogether. So it's not even in the Gospel of John. You think it would be, but it isn't. So we have three testimonies, but they're more or less one. Based on Paul's testimony on that Last Supper saying, this is the new covenant in my blood. Drink this in memory of me. Well, it turns out that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have a new covenant. And the whole Damascus document is really setting forth what the new covenant for them is. So that's a parallel sort of nexus, if you want, or center of activity or imagery. And what I show at the end of this, I'll give you the end before the beginning of the New Testament Code, which is why I call it the New Testament Code. I don't call it that for naught, because New Testament and New Covenant are considered the same thing. That in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's in the land of Damascus. But it came clear to me in these courses, I know it's crazy, and I don't know what to make of it, and I don't actually make of it, I don't make any final conclusions in the book either. But Damascus, and I don't want to ruin this for you because it's in the book there, fully described, in Greek, is that way. And you see, dam in Hebrew is blood. And kos in Hebrew is cup. So, it seems to me to be almost impossible to think that that could be an accidental relationship. The new covenant in the land of Damascus and the new covenant in my blood and so on and so forth. I don't want to go further than that. So I think that there is a relationship going on there. I'm not sure what it is, which is why I speak about the New Testament code in this book. That there is, I don't mean by that actual word-for-word code, but there are words, trip words, that are being used in both contexts that are being changed and altered in one context as opposed to the other context. So that we have two contexts. One basically very much law-oriented or Mosaic law-oriented or Torah-oriented or whatever you want to call it. And the other, the opposite, antinomian is what the word is. If you've never heard of that, antinomian means, I think in Greek, or is it Latin, nomos is law. So antinomian is against the law, unlawful, or not caring about the law, saved not by the law but by faith, if you want to call it that, as the Pauline presentation, which our Gospels reflect. So what I was trying to say after all that is that the Gospels, to my mind, are thoroughly Paulinized. Now, whether they're accurate or not is for you, or the believer to decide, or the observer to decide, I can't say. each person has to determine that himself, like a jury, if you care about studying things. We just don't take word and authority. Now, 400 years ago, you'd be burned for saying things like this, just like you'd be beheaded in Islam. You know, we've only had our civil rights protected for the last 250 years. So don't think that, you know, just because it wasn't said 500 or 1,000 years ago that doesn't invalidate it. Nobody could say these things 500 or 1,000 years ago. They'd be burned, like Joan of Arc. How would you like to be burned for nothing? You know, and actually out there, you know, auto de fe, someone reports you and you're actually literally burned alive. You know, that can really put a little bit of fear in you for actually saying anything. And you know, Galileo was, as you probably know, put under house arrest because they were going to burn him, but he said, well, okay, I'll just recant, and you know, just leave me alone. My daughter will take care of me. Just let me, you know, not go through that. You know, Savonarola, one of the monks who was burning everyone previously in the previous generation, was burned in the square of Florence in the 1500s. And there were people burned in England in the 1600s. So, you know, this is really near that you can think without someone, you know, you can watch Madonna go to Jerusalem and put a red thread around her, you know, navel or wherever she puts it. You know, do all the things that you guys are able to do. So it's nice to be able to exercise your brain. So in any case, as far as the Gospels go, I don't know anything about the historical Jesus. Nobody's agreed on who and what he was. No one's sure. No one's sure which testimonies are accurate, but I'll tell you what isn't accurate. He didn't spit in someone's mouth and cure that person from being deaf and dumb. And he didn't spit in someone's eyes or ears or anything like that. And he didn't say that, you know, that you shouldn't wash your hands before eating, that that's a stupid superstition to wash your hands before eating. You say, did he say that? He says it. He's made to say it, not my Jesus. He didn't say those things. So if your Jesus said that, that's cool. And you can tell your minister, Eisenman said this, is it saying, you know, and he'll go, you know, he probably didn't mean. It's in the scripture, and if you read my book, you'll find the actual quotes and so on laid out there really carefully. And I'm going to be severe on that. You know, I'm not, the Jesus of history, to my mind, wouldn't have said such absurd things. And you know, he didn't take people with evil spirits, and there was a herd of swine, and he threw the evil spirits in the herd of swine. That's Hellenistic superstition. That's Hellenistic novelization. I know it's painful. I know it's painful. I know it's hurtful. That's poetry is truer than history. That's the poetry of the time. You say, what is history? Maybe he did. Not mine. Maybe yours did, or someone else did. But, you know, this person had to be better than that. Had to have been better than that. He had to be really pretty perfect. I don't think he walked on waters either. You know, these are all Hellenistic superstitions that people had to do signs and wonders to be impressive. This is what the poets put in their literature. Now you say, how do you know this? How do you know this? You weren't there. Well, neither were you, and neither were the people that wrote it. So, you know, Jesus of history, it's got to be someone really importantly, you know, without too many flaws. And so I wouldn't ascribe human flaws to that person. Stuff that was put on him by writers who had either prejudice or something like that. So that's what I mean about Apocrypha. Let me finish what I'm saying. I don't want to get an argument about this at the moment. I'm just putting my point. We'll have plenty of time to argue about Jesus later.
I just want to ask a question.
Let me finish the point then. Let me finish the point. So this is what I mean by Apocrypha. You know, everything is Apocrypha. Everything is pseudepigraphic unless it's proven otherwise. So Enoch is pseudepigraphic. Mark is pseudepigraphic. Matthew is pseudepigraphic. John is pseudepigraphic. Thomas is pseudepigraphic. The Gospel of Judas is pseudepigraphic. unless you prove otherwise. The pseudo-Clementines are probably not pseudepigraphic, though they're called pseudepigraphic. In other words, someone called Clement probably wrote them and so on. Here, what's your question?
I was going to ask, since if you can believe what you said.
You believe whatever you want.
Yeah, I
Don't believe
understand
what I
that.
said.
But my question is that, you are an expert. Did Moses of history walk past the Red Sea?
Of course not.
Okay.
People don't see that. I mean, there weren't two walls of water on either side. That's the memory, folk memory of the people. Something happened, something impressive happened, something went down into the poetry, but is it exaggerated like the poets? I don't want to be unfair and say the Old Testament is full of truth and the New Testament isn't. I told you the Qumran has these defects, the Old Testament has these defects, all poetry has these defects. You think Achilles was put in the water by a god and that he was impervious to any sort of wound or anything except on his heel, where the god was holding his heel so Paris could only shoot him in the heel to kill him? You see, you're not bothered by that because it's not something that you believe in. It's not your religion, but the Greeks believed it. The Greeks believed it back then. So that's what I mean. Poetry is poetry. History, what actually happened is much more complicated. Did they bring a Trojan horse into Troy? And did the men come out of this? Were the Trojans stupid enough to pull this dumb thing into their thing and people then came out and opened up the gates? I don't know, but I think it's more complicated than that, I honestly think. Did Odysseus go all over the Mediterranean? I'm sure he got blown off course. Or his men turned into swine in Circe's lair. And you follow what I'm trying to say? That is the poet's history. And I don't think it stopped down into the Roman times. It only stopped with the beginning of printing, when we could have really accurate record keeping. Again, I'm sorry about that. So, I mean, King Arthur, was there a Holy Grail? Were there the round table? Did he pull the sword out of the rock? You know, all that sort of thing. I'm sorry to be tough on that. That's literature. And what people have a problem is, that's why I think that's so important, that saying, poetry is truer than history. But people believe all that. They're even running around now, what is that, the Da Vinci Code? You know, one of the most popular books ever written. You know, it's just nonsense, 3/4 of it. I know the guys who they ripped off. They had a lawsuit in London. They're my friends. I wrote a book with them. One of the books that you have here, as I told you, the Dead Sea Scrolls Uncovered. The guys lost everything in that lawsuit, as I told you, you know, trying to sue the Da Vinci Code. But why sue the Da Vinci Code for something that in fact you made up out of whole cloth yourself? Just because he ripped up what you made up, ripped off what you made up, you know, why should you be upset? Well, yeah, I guess it does upset. Yeah, that's mine. I made all that up. Now this guy's ripping it off and making $20 billion off it. Yeah, I guess it does hurt, you know, painful. But, you know, I told you someone ripped my stuff off, but I don't feel pain about it, you know, and that's great. But he didn't get as much money as the Da Vinci Code got. Dan Brown should have given them a little money, I guess, and they'd have been happy, you know, and so on and so forth. But anyway, so, yeah, I think sort of up to the time of printing, when books became generally available, then you couldn't really, and you know, you could keep accurate record keeping and stuff like that. You couldn't do this as much as in the classical time. But then everything became much more complicated. That's why we have Google. You know, we have so much data now, we don't know where to find anything. So Google, you know, finds it all for us. But then Google is full of so much rubbish that you got to just plow through this garden of total rubbish to find the thing, the nugget you're looking for, even in Google when you Google something up. You know, so that's how much data is out there. So yeah, things are certainly improving, and the scrolls are sort of helping out. Where do we get on this? Because I was trying to tell you that in Christianity, it's all wrong about the Son of Man. There is no Son of Man, There's no definite article, Son of Man. That is a misunderstanding of the Palestinian concepts. That shows that Palestinians didn't write those documents. That's someone who didn't know Hebrew and had this stuff communicated to them. And then, of course, there's all this testimony. You will see the Son of Man in the trial coming on the clouds of heaven. No, you won't see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. Son of Man in Hebrew and Aramaic means what? A man, not a supernatural being. Son of Man, Ben Adam, means you're a son of Adam. Now what Daniel says is something quite different. What Daniel says is you will see one like a son of man coming on the clouds of men. That is, he will have the appearance of a man, but he will not be a man. He will actually be a supernatural being of some kind. I'm not sure Daniel's right or wrong, but that's what Daniel says. And you know, some translations of the Old Testament actually, instead of you will see one like a son of man coming on, you know, on the clouds of heaven or something like that. Change that to you will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven because they want to cheat their parishioners. No, you can't do that with the Hebrew and the Aramaic. You can't just stick in anything you want there to make the whole thing consistent for the people who might have, you know, doubts or worries in terms of that. So, okay, I'm not blaming Jesus for this. I don't think Jesus said anything like that. But that's what I mean. I know people put stuff in Jesus' mouth. I know they did. Stuff that he would never have said. So the only question is, how much was put in or how little? And that's what the Jesus Seminar tries to determine. You've all heard of the Jesus Seminar? But they take votes on it. As I told you last time, I wouldn't take a vote on it. I mean, you know, you either understand and know it or you don't. I don't care what 50 people who don't know anything vote. That's not going to give you the truth. You can't vote on the truth. The truth is what an intelligent person perceives and is able to determine for him or herself. That's what the truth is, not what some committee decides for you. Yeah.
You take your conclusions because of other stories that happen in the Bible, the New Testament. Because to me, I agree with you. I think the Bible contradicts itself in certain stories of what Jesus did and making.
Well, forget about the contradictions. I'm actually saying some of the episodes, forget contradictions, are things that you would not take as an important superhuman being would do or say. That's what I'm trying to say. So that has been imputed to Jesus by people whose mind can only reach that far. That's the poet. The poet thinks that King Arthur got to be king because there was a sword and a stone that he could draw out of the stone, and then everyone else thinks that too now, right? So they make hundreds of books. I see there are hundreds of books about it. Now they're making a new movie about Jesse James, I see. I mean, Jesse James was a thug, a murderous creep, a low-life scumbag, and they've made about 50 movies because he's part of American folklore. How do I know? Because he took part in the raid on Lawrence, Kansas. And all those guys who did that, they killed a huge amount of people, just murdered and massacred for no reason, you know, innocent people in Lawrence, Kansas, because they were Union people, just children, men. They just burned the place out and just killed just an incredible amount of decent people. And in Missouri, they were doing this for years. Anyone who comes from Missouri will tell you the history of Missouri. Missouri is like, I don't know if you saw that movie Ang Lee made about I think it was just recently on, huh? No, that's poetry too. No. I think it was Ride the Whirlwind. What's it called? It was about Missouri in this period of the raid on Quantrill's Raiders raiding Lawrence, Kansas. It was with that Toby Maguire chap and Jewel, the singer. One of the best movies I ever saw. I think it's Ride the Wind or Ride the Whirlwind or something like that. It's incredibly, and if you want to see a portrayal of that period, go look at that Ang Lee movie. Of course, it's the one movie he made that no one sees. But that is really, you know, incredible that a foreign person from Taiwan could make a picture like that about American history. That'll tell you what kind of people were in the Jesse James boys gangs. I mean, they were like murderous thugs, cold-blooded killing machines. And so, and again, they've been romanticized, you know. So. All right. never mind all that. That's poetry I'm trying to tell you about. I guess I've overdone it. But all this is from, you never thought I'd get back, but I did. Adam. In Hebrew, Ben Adam, and forgive me if I've hurt anyone's feelings in the past. I'm not trying to, I want you to believe whatever you believe. But I can't cover up, what I've learned in these years since I believed what you believe. And believe me, there was a day when I believed, just like all of you, I believed everything in Scripture, I believed everything. So, and I was the same age as you were. And so I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't, I'm just saying someone should have told me what I told you so I could think about it anyway. No one ever taught me any of these things, no one ever told me any of these things. I had to find it all out myself from teaching these classes, Long Beach State. I never learned it at graduate school. I never learned it in any classes I taught at graduate school, period. I didn't learn anything about the Dead Sea Scrolls and Dead Sea Scrolls course I took at graduate school, nothing. So that's all I can tell you. I hope that this will be helpful to you in some way, at least stimulate you to think about that. Okay, Adam. I didn't even know who Adam was even when I had my PhD. I didn't even know what Ben Adam meant, even though I was studying Middle East languages and cultures. No one ever told me anything. Ben Adam, in normal, even everyday Hebrew in Israel today, you say, hey, be a Ben Adam. It's like us saying, hey, be a man, don't be a slob. Be something, be a Ben Adam. Be a real man. I don't worry about the woman thing. So son of man, in fact, the first prophet who uses son of man is who? You know. Some of those beautiful passages in the Old Testament. Cohen, you know. Who's the first one who uses son of man, the prophet in the Old Testament, to wake you up for a bit? I had a teacher, I used to sleep through all his classes. And you could always tell when I went to sleep because the pencil would drop on the floor when I was sleeping. And this one teacher, I had two classes that used to happen to me at college because I couldn't stay awake. And then I got in a class, I fell asleep. And he'd say, well, that's why you didn't learn anything. That may be. But this one guy, he was a Chinese literature professor. And he said, you see that guy over there who's sleeping in all my classes? He's going to get an A on the final because he's the perfect Zen master. And he was right. I got an A on his finals and everything he ever did in his class. So he was very understanding, but there was another guy who was a hotshot in the literature department, and my pencil would fall down, and it would, one of those wooden floors that it would roll down the floor and go clatter, 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 right down to the front of the room, and he would look and he'd know that I was sleeping over there. I was asleep, and he'd say, see that guy sleeping over there? And he said, he's going to fail my exam. He was a jerk, that professor. I didn't fail his exam, needless to say. I mean, he wouldn't give me an A, that's for sure, so he gave me a B. But in any case, he was a jerk. I didn't fail his exam. But anyway, Ezekiel. Ezekiel is the prophet that uses son of man, and you know where he uses it? Look at this here. It's one of the most beautiful scriptural passage ever composed. Chapter 33 of Ezekiel. And the Dead Sea Scrolls love Ezekiel. The word of the Lord that was addressed to me as follows. Son of man, speak to the members of your nation. There it is. The Lord is speaking to Ezekiel and calling him son of man. He's not the son of man. He's just a son of man or son of man. What? Man. Not God, not angel, not supernatural being. Man, speak to your nation. 10. Son of man, say this to the house of Israel. I love these passages in Ezekiel. I think they're the most beautiful passages almost in the whole Bible. And here he's got his view of the righteous man there in 33, if you've got a Bible in front of you. If not, I'm reading it for you. 34, the word of the Lord was addressed to me as follows. Son of man, prophesy against the shepherd. So is Ezekiel a supernatural being? Yeah.
Would Ezekiel be saying son of Adam, if you read this in... It sort of translates for us.
It's Ben Adam. He's saying Ben Adam. That's what he's saying. He's saying son of Adam. Ben Adam. Prophesy against the shepherds of Israel, saying to them, shepherds, the Lord says this is so great. Trouble for the shepherds of Israel to feed themselves. Shepherds should feed our flock. That you have fed on milk, you have dressed yourselves in wool, you have sacrificed the fat of sheep, but failed to feed the flock. He's very wordy, but he gets a kind of rap going here, momentum that would be the glory of any rap artist today. You have failed to make, even in English it's great, you have failed to make weak sheep strong, or care for the sick, or bandage the wound. Yeah, and he just gets himself worked into a frenzy here. And then he finally says, since you feed yourself, the Lord Yahweh, which is an attempt by modern scholars to pronounce the unpronounceable because the Jews didn't pronounce YHWH, which is what Yahweh is taken from. Did I tell you last time what Yahweh was? Yahweh or Yahweh or whatever, YHWH, is a third form Hebrew verb, third person Hebrew verb, fourth form causative, meaning HWH in Hebrew is always the root of to be, being. Now, we in English don't know that. We just see this Yahweh or Jehovah or some such approximation, and we have no idea that it actually has meaning. He who causes to be. He who causes to be, i.e. the Creator. That's what YHWH means. And when Moses meets him, if you know your Bible in Exodus, and he's at the burning bush, and he says, I can't go. I'm too frightened. How many know that passage in Exodus? Oh, God, I wish I could teach you Old Testament. So, he says what? I am, tell them, who should I say sent me? He said, okay, you're weak, I'll tell you. Tell them, I am who am, have sent you. I am who am who have caused myself to be. I am, self-creating principle. I am who am, have sent you. Ahweh. Why Ahweh? Because Ahweh is first person. Ah in Hebrew is I. Yah in Hebrew is he. Tell them Ahweh has sent you. And then he said, all right, I'm going to tell them Yahweh has sent me. So when Moses repeats it, he changes it back to third person. Tell them, he knows it's a verb taken as a noun. And we don't have it in English, a causative verb. We have, in Hebrew and Arabic, there are causatives. We call them fourth form verbs. So in any case, tell them Ahweh. Tell them Ahweh has sent you. Okay. So forget all this. This is an attempt to, I guess I have to tell you, there's this tape thing going, so I have to word this, but run out of tape, but let's look at this. How did the people who translated the Bible in the 1600s, this is what I mean, getting everyone on the same level here, come up with the word Jehovah? Did I tell you that? Huh? No. How did they come up with the word Jehovah? I'll get back to the Bible, don't worry. And the history of the Jews, don't worry. We'll get that by the end of the class. We'll finish up that again. Don't worry. We're going to go back in a minute. We're just picking up some loose edges. If you're going to read the Bible, you got to know what you're reading. The biggest sin most people make is they don't tell you what you're reading. They just let you try to figure out, and you don't know anything, so you can't know what you're reading. Someone has to give you like the booster rocket so that you can get to do the third stage yourself. Those lower stages just fall off and fall to earth. They're not worth anything. But no one's given you that stage yet. So someone has to give you at least a little bit of that so you can then get to the third stage. You can then take off. Crummy image I know, but poor attempt at poetry. Find another pen here. Okay. I don't know how I got bogged down all this stuff. Jehovah, you've all heard that. We all know that's wrong. That's why they're saying Yahweh. But why is it wrong? Do you know why it's wrong? I mean, it's an innocent mistake. It's not their fault. When the Protestants wanted to get a Bible, they didn't want to go to the Catholic Bible, so they said, look, let's not go to the Catholic Bible. That's how we got the Apocryphal books. I told you that last time. Let's go to the Jewish Bible. And so the Jewish Bible had YHWH, but they didn't realize Jews didn't pronounce that. You see, if you know Hebrew, you'll know that it's written like this. That's YHWH. It's written like that. That's written script, not the actual Babylonian characters that you have. But they would put the vowels underneath like that in what we call diacritical points. Arabic does the same, which makes Hebrew so frighteningly difficult, because most Hebrew texts are unpointed. If you go to Israel and read a newspaper, it doesn't have the diacritical points. It doesn't have the vowels. So you can't read the newspaper without knowing the language first. So that puts you behind the 8 ball. Because you have to know what the word sounds like before you can actually sound it out. You have to have a sense of it in your brain. If I see a word like NWSPR, newspaper, but I didn't know the word was newspaper, I might pronounce it all kinds of ways. Woos, PP, I don't know what I would do. The point is that if you don't know the vowels, and you don't know the vowels without knowing the language. Same with Arabic. American English shorthand was developed on Hebrew and Arabic, the prototypes. That's how they got shorthand, what secretaries would take in the old days before we did away with secretaries. But, dictation, now everyone just types everything for themselves and corrects it. But shorthand was based on these languages that didn't have vowels. They didn't have vowels. When were the vowels put in Hebrew? Around the 10th century. So 20 centuries before that, Hebrew had no vowels. So someone in the 10th century thought he knew how these words were pronounced. I don't think he was always right. I want to blame a woman for this, you see. So a woman, you see, you say, hey, I'm not involved in that. Some dumb guy did that, right. Okay, they did the best they could, but I'll take a given name here. What's the Hebrew name for King Solomon? Shlomo. What's the Hebrew name? Most of these kind of words I think are wrong. Well, what's the Hebrew name for Samuel? Shmuel. I don't think so. I don't think there was ever a king who would have called himself Shlomo, frankly. I really don't. That's just an imperfect vowel system that was put in there, you see. And you see, the Arabic knows the language before that. Samuel is Greek, Arabic, and English. That's where we get those words. And Sulaiman, Solomon, that comes down through the Greek, Latin, Vulgate, and through the Arabic Sulaiman and stuff like that. So I think that probably was originally more accurate. Someone was not understanding the grammar when he did the diacritical points, and putting diacritical points where he probably shouldn't put them. And those are two obvious examples. That's not all. The Hebrew Bible's not wrong about everything, but I think a few things it may be wrong about. And you have to do a comparative study of words before you finally decide how that word was pronounced 10 centuries before you existed. You can't go on oral tradition always, because oral tradition is very imperfect, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm still on the whole Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh thing.
Well, yeah, I'm going to go back to them, if you let me.
Okay.
Okay? I'm trying to show that, Jehovah, that's what I'm going to go back to, that, this is based on the diacritical points. I'm showing how you can mess the diacritical points up. The point is that, since you want me to go back there, I'm going to go back. What I really should do is answer the question after I finish the slot that I'm handing out, okay? Because otherwise, I get caught in the middle, and the whole point of it gets, evaporates for any really good sense it might have made. Happy to answer the question at the end. So, in any case, we're talking about how words get messed up in transmission. Well, this is not the case. I was just showing how the vowels were put on late. And I was showing you by the vowels being put on late that words like Shlomo and Shmuel and things like that came into existence that I honestly don't think existed at that time. But that isn't the problem in the Yud Hey Vav Hey. That isn't the problem with this. They don't know how to pronounce this anyway, and they admit that. They don't know how to pronounce this. Because it was pronounced by the high priest when? Once a year, Yom Kippur, inner sanctum of the temple, when he had to ask forgiveness on his knees for the sins of the people, taken as a whole unit. So the high priest would go in once a year on Yom Kippur and ask forgiveness for the people and pronounce the forbidden name of God. Otherwise, that was considered a something stonable offense, blasphemous, to pronounce the forbidden name of God. So when the Jews transmitted the material, wherever they saw YHWH or YHVH, whatever you want to call it, they put the vowels in for Lord, because they knew they were saying Lord, not YHWH. So just to remind them to say Lord, and the vowels for Lord were B and W, like in German, were Adonai. So they put in EOA here, or vowels similar to that, underneath in diacritic points. Y's or J's in English and European translation. So when the translators like Martin Luther or the King James, beautiful, beautiful translations, got a hold of this material, they said, oh, well, so this is just Jehovah, Jehovah. Oh, that's a nice sounding word, and so on. But it's wrong, because those vowels are for this word, or if you like. Therefore, Adonai, the Lord. They're not for those consonants. That's the question you were asking. I was going to get back to it anyway. Not to be tough about that, but I would have gone back. So that is where, I'm just saying, that is where we get our word Jehovah from. But I think we can say we know how to do this. Take prophets like Jeremiah. Do you know what that is in Hebrew? Yirmiyahu. Isaiah, Ishiyahu. They added the name of God at the end of their name, Yahweh. Now, I don't know, I think, did the website Yahoo get it from them? I don't know, but I think it was something like Yahoo. Just like the place was called Yahud. Judea was called Yahud. I think it was something like Yahoo, but I don't know precisely how they pronounce it. I'm sure it wasn't Yahweh or Yahweh, you know. But you say, well, how do we know? How did the high priest know? Oh, they knew how to pronounce it back in then. Someone had to tell the high priest how to pronounce it. He just didn't come down as a divine inspiration. So I'm sure they whispered it to each other, or told each other in private what it was. They didn't want to get struck down by a thunderbolt in public, or something like that. But they knew how to pronounce it, and that was forgotten. And I don't think the Jews know anymore how to pronounce it. And I don't think the scholars know, and I don't think the Christians know. And I don't think the people who have Jehovah know. That's a nice word. It's a little nicer than Yahweh, I have to tell you. Jehovah is nicer, but it's wrong. Yeah.
I had heard that Hallelujah also preserved a portion of the name, Hallelujah.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. I'm sure there would be that, because Hallelujah isn't right in English anyway. It's praise God, and I don't know the exact Hebrew, but it's I have to look it up how it was spelled in the Old Testament. But we say Hallelujah, but it wasn't pronounced Hallelujah in the Old Testament in the Hebrew. Yeah, it's there would be a praising God in there someplace, right? So yeah, you have that. So okay, let's go back to where we were. So this time I really did saw myself off. Oh, what were we talking about?
Adam.
Adam. And yes, back to Ezekiel. This beautiful material, because Ezekiel is using Yahweh here, and I'm going to stop in a moment. I just want to read you this beautiful material where he speaks of himself as Son of Man. And he says here, which I think is one of the most beautiful passages in the whole Bible, when he says, I'm going to raise up my shepherd, my son of David, line 23. In chapter 35, he keeps going out prophesying against Edom. In chapter 36, he talks about his jealousy, the fierceness of his jealousy and his rage. And then he says, mountains of Israel. Now, Ezekiel is in exile. He's in Babylon. He's been the second wave of exiles in around 490 or 488 or sometime, and he's waiting for the fall of the temple in 588, and he's waiting for the fall of the temple in 585. There, when he hears it, his tongue sticks to the roof of the mouth. He's so upset. But in any case, he's at the river Hybar in Babylon. And he says, the Lord Yahweh says this, I'm speaking in the jealousy, 36:6, of my rage, because you have endured the insults of the nations. Very well, this is what the Lord Yahweh says, using the Yahweh here, or Jehovah, or whatever. Lord, Lord, if you want. I raise my hand, I swear, the nations round about you shall have their own insults to bear. Mountains of Israel, you will grow branches, bear fruit. My people Israel, who will return soon. Yes, I am coming. I have turned you. You will be tilled and sown. I shall multiply the men who live on you, the whole house of Israel. And so on and so forth. Because the Lord, the world will know that I am Yahweh. Thanks to me, men will tread your soil. My people Israel, they will have you for their own domain, and never again will you rob them of their children. People have said, you are a man-eater. You have robbed the nation of their children. It is the Lord Yahweh who speaks. Ezekiel as the prophet of the Lord Yahweh, the Son of Man, the man prophet. You shall never again have to bear the taunts and insults of the nations, of the foreigners. It's the Lord Yahweh who speaks, etc., etc., etc. But this is why he does this. I put my fury on them because of the blood they shed in their land, line 18. I scattered them among the nations and dispersed them in the foreign countries. I sentenced them as their conduct and actions deserve. Okay, the Jews presented their history as a kind of, we have sinned and therefore we have been treated in this way. They have profaned my holy name among the nations where they have gone. Okay, they've done all these things. These are the people of Yahweh. They have been exiled, other people say. But I have been concerned for my holy name, which has been profaned among the nations. And say this, I am, the Lord Yahweh says, I am not doing this for your sake, house of Israel. What I'm doing is I want to display the holiness of my great name, which has been profaned among the nations. So the Lord, as Ezekiel presents him, is saying that he is doing this because of his name, of his holy name, and he wants to keep his promises to the Jews, to the people of Israel, because of his holy name. So it's not for their sake, but because of the holiness of his great name. And then he goes on to say, it's really a tremendous passage, if you've never read it. I'm going to take you from among the nations and gather you together from all the foreign countries and bring you home to your own land. And further along, on the day I cleanse you from all your sins, I will repopulate your cities and cause the ruins to be rebuilt, and so on, oceans, and so on and so forth. And the nations left around you will know that I, Yahweh, have rebuilt what was destroyed and replanted what was ruined. And the Lord Yahweh says this, to grant them further favor, I shall, and it goes on like that. And then you have the bones passage, which is the standing up of the bones, and finally, so Ezekiel is quite incredible. But in all this, he speaks of himself as Son of Man. So that's the first usage of Son of Man. Then the material that we're going to get next time, when we read Daniel next time, is going to be one like a Son of Man. And just to run over to Daniel quick before we have a break here. And you see, we will get back to the history, I promise now. But let me just run over to Daniel here. Look here in chapter 7 in Daniel, 7:12. We get this again when we look at it. It's about the horns and the animal, the horns that are uprooted. And everyone thinks this is the Seleucid Empire. You don't even know what the Seleucid Empire is yet. I'm going to tell you that next time. Anyway. These are the kings in the Seleucid Empire down to the 11th horn, what the Jews celebrate in their Hanukkah festivities as Antiochus Epiphanes. The 11th horn. I gazed and I saw in the visions of the night, it's one of the most famous passages in the whole Bible, certainly for Christians. I saw coming on the clouds of heaven one like a son of man. He came to the one of great age, and he was led into his presence, and on him was confirmed sovereignty, glory, kingship, and men of all peoples, nations, and language became his servant. His sovereignty is an eternal sovereignty which will never pass away, nor will his empire ever be destroyed. That is the prophecy that almost all of Christianity has plugged into. And that's where they get the Son of Man, but you see, it isn't the Son of Man. So where in the New Testament we have the Son of Man there's a problem there, let's put it that way. There's no one called the Son of Man, just someone overseas who didn't understand this material well, thought there was. So did Jesus say the Son of Man came eating and drinking? No, I don't think so. He may have said something like that, but he didn't use those words. And that's the problem. No tape recorders of that. Okay, you guys, you're all angry at me. I know I've gone off the subject. Take this break. At quarter of, we'll come back, and we shall finish the history down to the divided monarchy. I promise we're going to run fast. I apologize. I got off the subject. Oops, pardon me.